Hey guys, it would seem it is technical difficulties episode 2. We're just trying this shit out again. We're getting into Gary Johnson's town hall. We're gonna talk about what he has to say, but we're gonna watch it live and just stop it in between when we have something to say about it.
It'll probably be frequently. This is gonna be my guess.
Hopefully, and maybe he'll turn the bus around and I'll end up a fan. We'll see what happens.
Oh, we should make a bet on that.
It wouldn't be a fair bet.
I know.
I've had a sneak preview of some of it. So, hide and play. So, hopefully, you guys are hearing this right now. But it is just CNN's intro. So, we're going to start from here, and you'll be hearing back from us soon. Little difficulties here with some audio. We'll see what happens. Just want to make sure you guys are hearing it, not just seeing it. Right on, you guys are hearing it. Or will they just play spoiler to either Clinton or Trump? It's your choice, your decision, your questions tonight. I guess I'm going to have to leave that little bar down there so I can see roughly what time is.
All right. Well, I have to start by saying I love the production value on that. There was some effort.
It's a lot better than those ads we watched last week.
I'm surprised they spent any money on him.
Views.
New polling just out tonight shows 12% support for Libertarian nominee Gary Johnson in a three-way race, which is here tonight. Some of those voters, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, all of whom share one thing. They say they will not be voting for either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, or they haven't made up their mind. They've got questions. Can the Libertarians provide better answers than what the other parties have been given so far? We'll see in the hour ahead. As always, the questions come mainly from the audience. We've looked them over to make sure they don't overlap. I'll ask a couple of questions myself, but mostly staying out of the way. Let's get right to it. Joining us right now, the Libertarian presidential nominee, former Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico, and his running mate, former Governor William Weld of Massachusetts. Thanks so much for being here. So, before we get to the audience questions, I just want to start off with a couple questions really out of the headlines today. We talked about this new poll. Fox News poll shows you at 12%. That's only a three-way poll.
And that's only 7% over Harambe.
With Jill Stein showed you at 9%. That's the last time you were here. In our last four-way CNN poll, which came out just on Monday, still had you at 9%. What do you think you need to gain momentum? What more do you need to do?
Well, this interview right here is going to push us over 17, I'm sure. So thank you very much, really.
But it was 9% before the last town hall, and you're still at 9%.
Well,
I don't want to knock our ability to do that.
No, it's
starts off with a little
ratcheting up.
attention.
I mean, we're reaching 25 million people now, social media-wise, and we're raising money. And, of course, that gives us the ability to push that out. And so all the analytics look really good.
You know, there's been a number of high-profile Republicans who have said they're not going to be voting for Donald Trump. You just had Meg Whitman, who is a Republican.
So, Kevin, what do you think he
donor.
needs to do so far to gain momentum?
So, before I answer that question, can I just say that he reminds me kind of us right now, where he's jacked about 17%. Like we get pumped and we're like, yeah, we got this many views. It's like,
yeah.
He sounds a bit like me before I go to bed at night. So what he needs to do, honestly, is just to keep doing what he's been doing, which is to essentially, in my opinion, not be a libertarian and just go for the fringe vote on both sides. Just say, hey, I'm not Hillary, I'm not Donald. So that's all you should really need right now. And I think that's going to be how he gets that percentage.
Yeah, it's working so far, and it probably, like, if he's trying to draw the vote away from them, it'll definitely work. Do you think there's enough people there that are just looking for not Trump or not Hillary for him to win?
I think if enough people can get convinced out of that old argument of if you're voting for a third party, you're throwing your vote away, and they turn more to the aspect of if you vote for what you really believe in, you're not throwing it away, no matter how it plays out analytically, that the only way the system technically should work is if you vote your conscience and not just vote your party. But
that's one of his taglines. It's interesting you say that.
Really?
Vote your conscience. Yeah.
Wow.
No, that was I'm sorry, that was Ted Cruz on the arm.
Ted Cruz, your own personal Jesus.
Yes.
I think he's just going to keep playing to that fringe vote. I think that he might poll well enough to get on the ballot, but then I don't know that I don't think enough people will actually commit. I think the same thing, I kind of felt this way with Bernie, that for a lot of people, Bernie was some kind of fairy tale, but when push came to shove, they might not be willing to pull the trigger. I mean, though most of the millennials would have pulled the trigger, but I think some
literally.
Yeah.
Can we look at is it Venezuela right now?
Yeah, oh God, we're gonna need more.
Jesus
We're gonna need
Christ.
more time for that.
But so you don't see him winning the election is what you're getting at, though, even if he.
No, Hillary's gonna win the election.
See, I think he's gonna pull enough. He's gonna pull those Bernie supporters from Hillary that want Obama to vote. Those you support. That's what got Obama over the first big hill. I think those are going to be the people that might go to Johnson if he just plays this base here. But I think he's going to win it for Trump at this point. I see him getting on the ballot at this point just because he's getting enough attention from everywhere. Even the major news networks are talking about him, though. And it looked like Trump even said that he wanted to see Johnson on the debate stage. And I guess the corporation or whatever it is that puts on the debates, they even came out and said that they would, if he was close enough to the 15% in polls, that they would put him on the stage. And what everybody was saying is they get to pick the polls, so they're just going to pick 5 polls or whatever that he's not at that 15% and say, sorry, he didn't make it. He was only at 11 or 13. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's room in there for him to get on that debate stage. I definitely can see it happening, not because he's so like inspiring, but just because that there is that market out there.
I'd love to see him on the debate stage just because of the entertainment value.
He's not. Watch this before you say that and stick to it. Please watch this, and then at the end of it, tell me if you still think there'll be some.
You don't know maybe how cynically I like to enjoy things.
Okay, I got
you. Donald, and Hillary up there. That's going to be the most uncomfortable 2 hours or hour, however long it's going to be. It's going to be physically uncomfortable. Probably it's going to be like watching Steve Carell on The Office, just doing something ridiculous to make you want to turn away from the television.
That you make a valid point there. I'm just going to start this back up.
Clinton, obviously, you saw Mike Bloomberg, who was the independent as a governor, as a mayor of New York, speaking at the Democratic convention for Hillary Clinton. It's got to be frustrating for you that Bloomberg didn't look at you, that Meg Whitman didn't look at you. What is your message to Republicans out there watching tonight?
Well, 2 former Republican governors that got reelected in heavily Democrat states. I think that speaks volumes. And not really frustrated, just understanding how difficult it is to cross over the line if you're an elected Republican or if you've been a former elected Republican.
Governor Well?
Well, I think the message to Republicans is that we were 2 of the most fiscally responsible, i.e. conservative governors.
You want to tackle that one?
When we served together.
I mean, we touched
feel like
on
you
it.
do because we've talked about it a couple of times before.
I thought it was in the little, like, when I watched clips of this before, I thought it was Weld that said that. And I was like, okay, Johnson can say he didn't say it. But if my notes are accurate to, like, reality, he raises budget more than anybody else in contention for the presidency, except for one, like, Democrat. So, like, I'm just going to go on, but go back to one of our past episodes or just look it up on Google, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Gary and I were good friends then. We're good friends now. But we were each rated the fiscally most conservative governor in the United States.
Time.
That
Time.
takes some doing.
Time. How are you each? They tied. How do you tie in that? So I'm calling it out, and my whole you might get sick of it at some point, RJ. My whole thing with this is that this is just another piece to the show. These guys are just as fake and full of shit as what you're used to, if not more so, because I think they're just kind of selling out on what I have been led to believe their party is supposed to stand for. That's not what this doesn't sound like the same platform to me.
If he's lying, again, comment if I'm wrong, but what I've read so far shows contrary to any of that. But they keep pushing the partner message, and that they keep like talking as a team. So saying they both is like, yeah, maybe they did that lie on purpose if it is a lie. Because you'll notice they'll talk about it later, that being partners in this presidency.
The whole thing, yeah, and that's a very interesting strategy. I don't remember the last time I saw that. I mean, you definitely, a lot of times what was happening was, not a lot of times, but there have been times where you'd have, say, two Republicans both running for the Republican ticket, and whoever got first would get it, and whoever got second would be the vice president. There have been issues where that's turned into, I point to Reagan and George H.W. Bush, who ran against each other for the Republican ticket, and yet somehow he ended up being Reagan's VP, even though Reagan swore he wouldn't have anybody tied to the CIA or anything like that on his ticket. He ends up having the guy who formerly ran it as his VP, that somebody who he at one point was absolutely against. But so I don't remember, maybe you do. I don't remember this tag team aspect ever before. And
in the presidents, like in the presidential races,
yeah,
I think it's basically unprecedented.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, there's a lot of love for Joe Biden, but still, I don't remember Obama talking about him or with him or using him as a prop on his platform.
That's funny. No, you're right though. At the end of the day, I don't really think that I've heard of any other duo for the presidency.
And that may help them swoop some of these millennial votes and some of these Bernie votes. That team aspect, that sort of, it could help.
Yeah, we're all in this together. Look how
it could have a psychological effect.
With all this fighting, look how inclusive these two are. Look at them wanting to work together.
Because here's finally not a candidate that's talking me. He's talking we,
Yeah. But if that is not true, there's no way somebody on Trump's team isn't hearing this shit and thinking the same thing I am, and it becoming an advertisement if he's actually ever a threat. But I don't see Trump spending money on it.
But like you said, Trump wants him on the debate floor. So, and does Hillary take the risk? You think Hillary's going to attack this guy at any point? I don't think she needs to.
Well, they've put out a lot of love for Hillary, especially Weld. They actually work together. They both, he was a former prosecutor. Johnson actually begged for Weld to be on the ticket. He begged the convention to please vote for Bill Weld for the ticket, and it was mainly for his influence and his money. It wasn't for his principles at all. He's pro assault rifle ban, but here's I was just saying, I don't see him pulling away too many Republicans. Here's his message to the Republicans: we probably should get back into it.
Yeah.
Socially inclusive, tolerant, whatever word you want. In fact, we've been leaders on those issues. I was all by myself for a decade.
Early 90s, as I remember.
In the 90s, very early 90s.
91, I think it was.
Lesbian issues, yeah, right when I came into office. So we stand for the proposition, as I said at the Republican convention in Houston in 1992, we want the government out of your pocketbook and out of your bedroom. And I tell you, the polling shows that a majority of Americans think that.
So what is it? Is it just a question of publicity? Is it just a question of people just don't know what libertarians are?
The idea that we should not be at those debates expressing what's a majority point of view in the country can only be laid at the door of the two-party monopoly, the duopoly that has a stranglehold on power in Washington. That's the R's and the D's, who sometimes seem to exist mainly for the express purpose of killing each other.
Let's talk about the Republicans a little bit more, because obviously there's huge divisions right now within the Republican Party. And we've just seen yesterday Donald Trump refusing to endorse Paul Ryan refusing to endorse John McCain. Do you see this as an opportunity for you? What's happening in the Republican side?
Well, it's really both sides. I just posed the question: if either Trump or Clinton are elected, that things will be more polarized than ever. Neither side is going to get along with the other. And what if you elect a couple of former Republican governors, two-term, re-elected, running as libertarians? What if you elect them as president, vice president, calling out both sides?
How can you bring things, if you're calling out both sides, how can you bring things together in Washington? How can you do what Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump did?
I think it might be refreshing to have a party that was not terribly partisan holding the White House. And we would hire the best people from the Democratic Party that we could find, the smartest people from the Republican Party that we could find, the best people in the Libertarian Party. And our...
Okay, so it takes him until the very end to remember to mention the Libertarian Party. You can see on the look in his face, he's like, oh, there's one more, there's one more. Oh, from the Libertarian Party, we'll also get some of those in there. How are you supposed to fix a system by including the most ranking officials from the past system within your, like, inner circle? What are they going to do other than obstruct? Or do you really think by bringing them in, they're going to work together and then work together for a libertarian agenda? No, they already have the military-industrial complex behind both of them. You're not going to end that shit with that. Like, you need a revolution, and maybe not with guns, but with the electorate. You need to say, okay, so after you get us into the presidency, you also need to start electing your congressmen, and you also need to start electing your senators as libertarians. We need to get this stuff turned over. Maybe we don't get it done in 4 years, but we need these 4 years to start building. And then, heck, you can elect us for a second term once we have those people in there to make actual change. But you're right. Right now, with the parties the way they are and the people that are in office, you're not going to change shit. We need to get those out next. You need to start that revolution. And if you want to do it through the polls, you need to start building that base. But you can't have the base focused on the next 5 minutes. You need to change their focus. If they're focused on the next 5 minutes, they're not going to see shit, and they're going to get tired of us. So if somehow you make the jump to the presidency, which I don't see happening, you're going to bring that in and make it look like the third party came in and nothing happened. Either we obstruct or we go along with everything and nothing changes. Which one is it?
Yeah. And that's part of my belief that you can't fix the system. I don't understand why people get so fired up and hostile with each other over their presidential candidate. I think we have this big misconception. We give the president too much credit at times when he doesn't deserve it, and we blame him for things that he doesn't actually have that much control over. And to think that once every 4 years you can follow one person and vote based off your emotions and your emotional pull towards them, and think that that is somehow going to fix a system that we can generally agree doesn't work for all of us.
Right.
Okay, I think no matter what side you're on at this point, there's one thing every American citizen can agree on. It's that this is not a perfect system. It can be fixed.
But they're not saying any of that. They're simply saying, if you get us here, we're going to work together because we'll make that happen, even though the Republicans obstructed everything Obama wanted to do, vice versa. So you're going to bring those two teams in, and then they're going to work with you to reduce everything that they wanted to do? Because to fix anything, you have to tackle it from both ends. The concessions they were willing to make on the budget were such minor fucking things. The things you actually have to attack is the military budget and social welfare spending. And to get their vote back, the Democrats cannot crack down on social welfare spending. That's where they get their base. I'm not trying to be a dick, but it's a fact. And that's why they work so hard for the votes they work for. It is what it is. But just the way they're playing the game is not anywhere near how you need to play it to build up people. Because if you just flounder out, we're going to need to do the spokesperson in 4 years that actually starts building that base. So what have you done for us?
Yeah,
like we all know an incumbent presidency, like you basically, as long as you don't fuck up that hard, you have the next 4 years. But there's other elections going on right now too. They could be getting those libertarians into those offices with them if they wanted to build that.
Well,
base.
maybe. I mean, you also, hopefully, if nothing else, these guys, this recent presidential election over the last year or so has brought in the attention of enough people to the idea that they need to be paying more attention to all of these things, that they can't just vote once every 4 years. They need to start actually reading legislation at times and getting active. I don't know how much that's going to happen, though. I think this is all in the moment stuff. I think as soon as the Olympics hits, it's going to be out of sight, out of mind. It's still going to be a big thing, but you know, we have short attention spans, and don't be surprised to see a media lull during the Olympics. Anyway,
Yeah,
but I think this whole thing is just another piece, another piece.
I can't wait
show.
for Trump during the Olympics, though, because it's in such a fucking shithole. The things he's going to say, I hope, are going to be beautiful. Back to the video.
Yeah.
Proposals out of the White House would not say, take that, you stupid D party or you stupid R party. It would be, you know, here's what we think. This is maybe kind of in the middle. Could we come together around this? And the recipients of that information would not feel attacked, so they might be more likely to come to the table because they wouldn't feel like they were going to be made fools of.
We're also proposing something unique, I believe, in that we're planning to do this as a partnership.
How does that?
There it is.
Well, how does it work? Not having separate staffs, not being divided, but really 2 heads for the price of 1, and that it would be a plus for the country, believing that.
It helps that we've known each other for 20 years and sort of chose each other a long time ago to be friends, and then again more recently.
This guy was my role model.
I think that would make for good television. I think that his polls would go. Their polls would go up, pun intended.
The ticket is beyond my wildest dream.
I want to hear about your vision of America right now, because you know we've just come out of the 2 conventions where we heard very different visions of America. Donald Trump's vision of how things are right now, and certainly Hillary Clinton's as well. How do you see where America is at?
I don't think life in America has ever been better. I mean, we get along better, we communicate better, our kids are smarter than ever. I mean, when you look at Black Lives Matter, when you look at
our fucking debt, you fucking moron.
Stop it.
The discrimination that is existing and that has existed.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
We're communicating better than we've ever communicated before. So we're going to come to grips with this. And we do have issues, but we need to address them. So optimism.
The country's in a fine place. And it's still the envy of the world. You know, people envy our rule of law and our economy and the way we.
People envy our rule of law. We have more of our population locked up than anywhere else in the world.
The rule of law, not
Are
the
you
rule of the
shitting
jungle.
me? Who the fuck admires our police state other than other police states? Maybe, no, Iran's got a better police state. They don't, China's laughs at our police state. And then everybody else in all the other freer countries laughs at us.
He just also paraphrased Poppy Bush, which instantly means no vote. And then now he's making a nice poppy face right there.
In general, but there's an elephant in the room, which is the paralysis in Washington as a result of the ferocious hatred of the 2 parties for each other. And I think it's getting in the way of effective policy being made.
But I don't understand how you get over that. I know you say you'll hire the best Democrats, you'll hire Republicans, but when you have conservatives who believe any form of compromise is compromising on principles, I mean, that's the logic.
Some people.
Can we talk about the liberal bias there in that question? Yeah, it's only the conservatives that can only have it their way or the highway.
Yeah,
CNN though.
CNN,
the Clinton News Network, man.
I legitimately heard someone say over the past 2 days that they refused to listen to Fox News or MSNBC. They kept it strictly CNN because, quote, it's the only one it's the only unbiased one. And I was just like, oh yeah, for sure, dude. Absolutely.
That way, they're probably not going to be members of our coalition if they think they can't compromise on anything at all. We were red governors in blue states, and we had to, in order to balance the budget, which not everybody wanted to do. We had
you have to balance the budget. It's the law.
Washington have shown precious
it is the law that your state has to have a balanced budget. You just have to project.
So when Donald Trump says "Make America Great Again," you believe America
you're going to make enough money off the taxpayer.
Never been better, and that isn't to say that we don't have issues, but we should be dealing with those issues.
Governor Johnson, you recently said that if you had to describe Hillary Clinton in one word, the word you would use was beholden. Who is she beholden to?
Well, when you look at really, it's just not coincidence, I don't think, that Bill Clinton and Hillary both are making huge amounts of money.
Good for you. Good for you, Gary Johnson.
I mean, there are others that look at this, Anderson. I don't want to throw rocks at this, but really, it's a pay to play. It's just not.
So beholden to big money donors, beholden to Wall Street.
Well, their own interests, if you will, that they're making money off of this. That they're making money off of this. That as Secretary of State, Bill goes out, does $1 million speaking gig, and then the next day, Hillary signs an agreement with the sponsor of that speaking gig, and that's not good. That's beholden, if you want to say that. It smacks of pay to play, and I think it goes beyond just smacks of pay to play. That it's really something that's out there.
Governor Well, I know you've known Hillary Clinton for a long time. Right? You shared an office once long ago. Do you agree with that assessment? Is she beholden?
Well, I think what Gary said is factually accurate. The Democratic
Bob Well brought his thesaurus to the party.
He used to be a prosecutor.
That's with a T. The Tax Policy Center costed out Mrs. Clinton's proposed tax hike at $1.1 trillion. And, like I say, Gary and I both balanced the budget, in fact, cut the budget. And I cut taxes 21 times. He cut taxes 14
You cut taxes,
times.
You didn't cut the budget, at least that's my understanding.
As a result of that.
And then the taxes still went up. You cut specific taxes.
The Democrats are going to have a very hard time avoiding increasing the $20 trillion national debt that we'll have when President Obama leaves office.
You should pause that. So the idea that that one gets used a lot as fodder that candidates throw around at each other, but we have a debt-based economy. So, but no, they won't tell you that. So they'll say that this person has no way of avoiding raising the national debt, knowing that that's probably inevitable if you want to create more money. So it's just something I had to stop there and point that out, that like here he's essentially just like throwing a turd that could easily just be lobbed back at him, because anybody could say that about anybody, because right now that's how the system works. It's how our money is made. So anyway,
they call it like a service economy right now, but we should do an entire episode, or at least a little snippet where we explain what a debt economy is.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a while, and it's kind of a long process. We'll get some visual aids for that one, definitely.
Well, I know you're new to the team, but that and fiat currency, which you need, if I'm not mistaken, to have a debt-based currency, you need a fiat currency, or debt-based economy, you need a fiat currency, if I'm not mistaken. That's a central reason behind libertarian standings on taxation and currency backing in general, is because of those. But they don't bring that up. But we definitely should talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm down.
Oh, it'll go in the other direction.
When you were asked to describe Donald Trump in one word, the word you picked was huckster. Is that still the word you would use?
Yeah, I think he's a showman. He's a pied piper. He's the music man. But more recently, it's gotten a little bit more serious. And the noun that comes to my mind is a screw loose.
You really think so?
No, I do. It's a temperamental question, and I say this almost with affection for Donald Trump. Maybe he should consider some other line of work, like anything other than President of the United States. You don't think Governor Johnson, do you agree that he has a screw?
It seems like they're trying to turn off the Trump supporters.
Yeah, well, and also I just want to point out the fact that the number of people that just clapped in that crowd plays to the idea that, again, this whole production leans Democrat. And
was there that kind of applause after he talked about Hillary? I don't remember it.
I don't remember it being. I mean, maybe it was. Maybe they did just feel a bunch of people are going to clap at everything he says bad about either one. But
I don't think there was.
There was definitely an applause. I can't remember how loud it was, but
yeah.
Or that.
Well, what we both like to talk about is, was there anything that Hillary didn't promise in her speech the other night? And then with regard to Donald Trump, just starting off with immigration, we're a country of immigrants. We should be embracing immigration. We shouldn't be talking about restricting it. And then when he talks about killing the families of Muslim terrorists, when he talks about free trade, but in the next sentence he says, I'm going to force Apple to make their iPads and their iPhones in the United States. States and that we should apply a 35% tariff on imported goods. Well, who pays for that?
Good for you,
That's not a
Johnson.
libertarian principle.
It's not
Good for
at all.
you.
And I think that
Let's see if you keep that
unfairly,
principle
the
later.
world has really connected crony capitalism and free trade. They've kind of, the thought is that it's one and the same, when in fact it's opposite. So we're all about free trade.
I want to talk about that issue and a lot more coming up. Stay right where you are. When we come back, questions from the audience. Is the CNN
Everybody's
Libertarian
always
Town Hall.
about free trade until they get somewhere.
Yeah, and he actually said he was pro TPP.
Yeah, there it is.
So I don't know.
Welcome back.
But what he's saying is anti-TPP.
Welcome back to the Libertarian.
Yeah.
Town Hall.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm
Gary
saying. Yeah, he
Johnson,
says he's free
Time now
trade,
for,
but then he
questions
supports
from
the
the audience.
TPP.
I'd like you both to meet Kimberly Munley.
Par for the
She was one
course.
of the responding civilian police officers at Fort Hood. She helped put an end to the mass shooting there that left 13 people dead. She was shot 3 times in exchange of gunfire. Her femoral artery was severed. Her knee was shattered in more than 120 pieces. She's currently the president of Step Up for Soldiers, which is a nonprofit that helps disabled veterans adjust to a post-war environment. She's an independent and she's undecided. Welcome.
Thank you.
Fort Hood
My
was a while
question
ago,
is,
right?
since the November 5th, 2009
think it was a
attack,
Navy
there have been
officer shot a
numerous
bunch of
terrorist
people.
attacks since
Naval
then,
base.
both stateside and
I'm
abroad.
probably wrong.
And my question is, what is your view on the threat of Islamic terrorism, and how do you plan on keeping our citizens safe and fight the threat while downsizing our military force numbers?
She said it in the clip. She said, how do you
couple of
keep our
things.
citizens state instead of safe? His solution is the state, I'm sure.
There's a
Good
recent poll
question.
came out last week among active military personnel, which I thought was really significant, who they favored to be president of the United States. And Johnson Weld was favored 39%, Trump 31%, and Clinton 20%. So, hey, we are at war with terrorism. And we will do
Do you
everything
think maybe that's 'cause
we
they wanted
can
out
to
of the
protect
wars?
the United States from
Here's something he's not mentioning. Ron Paul got the most contributions from the Air Force, or from people in the Air Force, and he was completely anti-war, anti all of these foreign engagements. I don't think that he comes out like
that threat.
Hmm.
But we're not going to support regime change, believing that our military interventions, when it comes to regime change, has led to the unintended consequence of making things worse, not better.
Well, what about the threat? I mean, here at home, just today, a D.C. transit police officer was charged with helping ISIS. Do you have a plan for dealing with?
That's the lone wolf problem. The person copycat, taking cues from ISIS, and I proposed a 1,000 FBI agent task force, similar to task forces
You mean the
that we had
NSA?
in the Justice Department when I was there under President Reagan. We had one for organized crime called the Organized Crime Strike Forces, and we took out the top 3 echelons of organized crime by concentrating all the knowledge in one place, and tips and hotlines, and you amass the evidence necessary to get.
This is a libertarian. Instead of saying, when I was under Reagan or whatever, I tried getting him to change the legislation that created organized crime to begin with. He's talking about how he built a state database of citizens that they suspected of being involved in this, instead of getting to the root of the fucking problem. Let's see if maybe in the rest of this he gets to the root of the problem and says how he'd rather change it.
No way. There's no way. These guys just hopped on a
search
trend.
warrant or some form of surveillance to make the case to take out the network. And the tragedy in the Omar Mateen case in Orlando at the nightclub was that man had been interrogated twice by the FBI, and when they couldn't make an airtight case on him, they dropped his name from the list, so he disappeared from view. That would not have happened in the days when we were fighting organized crime.
So what he's saying is that these lists under him would become indefinite. That this person was investigated, and then he wouldn't be left alone after they found nothing. Because this is 1 out of a fucking billion people that have been investigated and generally left alone and do nothing. But what he's saying is, no, you're still going on that list. We're going to still surveillance you.
And it's that same
Surveillance you.
it's that same ridiculous argument of, hey, I know that we screw up at our job a lot, so you know what you should do is give us more resources and more power, and then we'll show you that we can do it well. And that's all that we need, is we just need more power and more control.
He has all the power he needs, though, already. The NSA. Look at everything they can do.
That's what
he doesn't even need it. I don't know if he doesn't realize it or he's not pointing it out, but once he gets in there, he has that more than 1,000 agent task force.
Well, they got
listening to
through
everything.
the Snowden thing by saying la 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 traitor traitor traitor, and so maybe that's why he's not bringing that up, because most people probably don't even realize how effective that tool is.
Yeah.
Or even the Enron task force. So that's something very specific you can do that's been done by the Justice Department.
But I've seen you talk about 20% budget reductions across the board of the government. Would that include the FBI? And if it includes the military, to the question, how do you cut a military budget at the same time as
the Pentagon itself says that we can cut 20% of U.S. bases. That's the Pentagon itself.
that's bases inside the United States?
Yes, and
Which
outside.
gets into politics.
Well, exactly. It gets into politics. I think that also brings up the topic of term limits. And if term limits existed, I think elected officials would do the right thing as opposed to whatever it takes to get reelected. But big contributing factor for why that's not happening.
But traditionally, libertarians, are not about intervention in foreign lands. If dealing with Syria, dealing with ISIS, doesn't that require boots on the ground?
What I was talking about was purely domestic.
Domestic, yeah.
Wolf. And you say, wouldn't that
What
be
I was
expensive?
talking
Yeah.
about only dealt with sovereign citizens.
Yeah, it's another thing again where you see an interviewer ask a question and a guy just go back to his last talking piece. I have coined it the Rubio, I'm sure, as others have, just because it's easier to say than explaining it every time. And when you say that, people are like, "Oh yeah, I totally know what you're talking about." But he potentially could be Rubioing here. He might just be clarifying his last statement, but
I would rather it be Rubioing and a mistake than him saying, "No, man, we're not going to fuck with people over there. We're just going to watch our own people." Why are you watching your own people? What's leading to these crimes?
yeah, it's libertarian over. Maybe he'll be libertarian on this front and say,
But it's
yeah.
a top national priority to defeat ISIS and its copycatters in this country. So you do a supplemental appropriation for 1,000 FBI agents. Does that cost money? Yeah, it costs money, but you do what you have to do. Abroad, I think, it's a tougher fight. I mean, if it's a obvious ISIS training platform in South Yemen, and you have a complacent or willing local government, maybe drones is the way to take that out. If it's isolated people, roaming around in hills and caves in Afghanistan, much less appealing. If it's as Gary was saying, regime change in Syria or Lebanon, where the people we throw in with turn out to be aligned with ISIS,
Still going to be the world
that's
police,
extremely
just
unappealing.
softer hands.
Would you have gone
And
after
just more
Osama bin
drones.
Laden? Would you have made
Yes, would have gone in after Osama bin Laden,
Just
and after
create more
7
terrorists.
months, we defeated Al Qaeda. We should have gotten out. We should have gotten out with the caveat that we'll come back if Osama bin Laden raises
We
his
should
hand.
have gotten out
And
with
that
an
I think we should
apology.
get out of
note.
Afghanistan now. And as difficult as that will be, the consequences being, you could argue, will be horrible. Those same consequences are going to exist 20 years from now, if that's when we decide to get out, or for some that will just stay there forever.
So even if it means the Taliban coming back, you still say get out of Afghanistan?
Well, the Taliban is there, and I think we're kidding ourselves if we think that hanging around there forever, unless we plan to be there forever. But
Yeah, the argument that those 8,400 troops have to stay there proves too much, because the rejoinder is, how long are they supposed to stay there? Forever?
I want you to meet Eddie Moy. He's a marketing manager from Brooklyn. Right now, he's leaning toward voting for Secretary Clinton in November. Welcome, Eddie.
Good evening. My question is, do you think that civilians in the United States should be allowed to purchase and own semi-automatic weapons like AK-47s or AR-15s?
Oh, suck my
Well,
dick.
right
Why
now,
is
that
it
is
only
a
mention 2
category of
guns?
weapon
The general public
that,
knows about 2 fucking
encompasses
guns. I'm
30
sorry.
million
Oh, you're good.
weapons, semi-automatic. That's 30 million rifles. So let's just say we passed a law that outlawed semi-automatic rifles. I think you'd have maybe half of those rifles turned in, and the other half would be 15 million of those rifles would be owned by law-abiding citizens that are now going to become criminals. I think it's a misunderstood issue. There are no automatic rifles currently allowed for sale. That went away decades ago.
So no change in the sale of semi-automatics.
So we don't want to take away the rule because not enough people listen to the rule. So we don't want to have a fucking black eye. These people want to hold on to the rifles for the same reason that's happening right now. You're trying to take them away. That scares them. you're going to have to send us in to take the rest of those. He doesn't bring it to what the government actually does in the situation where you don't give up the shit.
Yeah.
If you're already on a registered list, they're going to come to your fucking house.
Yeah, he doesn't.
And if you don't give it to them, they're going to shoot you.
Yeah.
Like, bring it to the conclusion.
That's what
Tell
he should have
him,
brought
are you
up.
really
That
willing to go to these people's houses and shoot them for their rifle? Is that what you're telling me? Because they, A, either want to defend themselves, or B, just like guns and don't like the government telling them what to do. Either way, not your fucking business, man.
That's what I'm
Look at
telling
these
you.
knife attacks that just happened. Did you see about those?
You mean a dude kill 80 people with a bus or a truck? I mean, you can. There's so many things that you can use. Like, not to be crass about it, but you could, yeah, knife attacks, whatever. You could kill someone with a shovel, with a baseball bat. I mean, I don't want to give you guys a list.
Fucking Boston bombers.
You
with these
freaking
propane
maniac.
tanks. It's get to the root of it. Explain it to them. This guy is a fucking minority as it is. Explain it to the rest of the people on his team that maybe can be like gotten a hold of and explained it to. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I do know what you mean, but
And-
this is why I'm saying this is just all part of the show. This is all about that illusion of choice. Let's throw in another third fake option. Let's throw in a third option that they don't really have.
And maybe that's why they're getting where they're getting the Green Parties on in a couple weeks.
The AR-15s should still be made available.
Well, AR-15 is a class of weapon of which there's 30 million semi-automatic rifles.
So no change.
Right.
Okay.
He forgot what he was talking
Yeah.
about.
An actor from the Bronx is
You're telling me this man isn't so high.
for you this year.
Good evening, governors. My
Future
question
Jeff.
is, the most frequent argument I come across when telling people about you is that a vote for a third-party candidate is a wasted vote, or even worse, a helpful vote for either Trump or Hillary. So what is your response to the idea that a vote for a third-party candidate is a wasted vote or helpful to one of the two major party candidates? And why is a vote for your ticket not a wasted vote?
Pause,
Wasted
please.
vote is
Okay.
voting for somebody
Something
that you
I
don't.
have to point out here, because it's been obvious to me through all three questions, and it should be obvious to everyone at this point, especially with how long that fucking question was.
Planted.
These guys that are asking these questions are, if not actors, they have been trained rigidly. We're on here right now on the radio. We've done episodes upon episodes, and I still pause and and ah. And this guy just rattled through that perfectly. He is not just your average citizen that's sitting there that had a question. If he was just your average citizen, there would be a lot of ums, he would be nervous as fuck. Your average citizen doesn't get up in front of 20 people and in front of the nation every single day.
No,
To
and
talk
he
to
knows
people.
it's live TV.
And these people all know it's live TV, and they have all been on point, not a stammer, not an and all of their questions. Did you see how specifically it took that guy 3 sentences to get his question out? Like that was
yeah.
a paragraph. These have all been, they are all leading
They
questions.
say they review the questions to make sure they don't overlap. To me, that means they consolidate the questions to the best speaker, to make sure that everybody's question from that pool would get answered. But also, definitely could just mean they're just plans because they do read it perfectly. Could there be a teleprompter?
Would it matter though? I mean, what if you were reading a teleprompter right
If they're
now?
speaking for multiple people and they are legitimate questions that people have, which so far they are legitimate questions.
They're
that would get
legitimate.
raised.
I'm not saying that the questions aren't legitimate. All I'm saying is the questions might have all been reviewed, but probably 50 to 75 of them came from the staff, were submitted through the normal way,
I'm
and
cool
were
with that.
accepted. And then that these people who are performing these questions, maybe, okay, the Fort Hood lady, I'm not going to sit here and say that she wasn't there. She probably was. That could be legit. They're either coached or they're hired. And their questions they're representing might be real, but those questions have been tweaked into leading him into an answer. And these people have clearly been coached on how to ask this question. And they've got it perfected.
I'm kind of okay with it. Have you ever seen like one of those live interviews where just the population gets to ask people the questions and they're so like derp? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what'd you have for lunch today? Or not just that, but like you didn't ask the right question there. You need to ask the question everybody's thinking. Like they bring the topic out and then they change the question to something too specific or something like that. And then your question doesn't get answered. The topic was already mentioned, so somebody else can't ask the question without seeming like an asshole or just boring everybody because they wanted a more broad answer. And then if you're trying to put the candidate on the spot, they can just say, I already answered that, man, because the topic was brought up. And your fucking attention span isn't going to remember that topic was already popped up but not answered. I mean, yours might, but I don't think the average person's is. I like this approach to anything like that.
I can't stand it because to me it just shows that the line has been crossed between fact and fiction, and that there is plenty of fiction going on with this. I don't like the idea because if something is produced this way, if it's this predetermined and this pre-thought out, then it probably has its own agenda behind it that I may or may not be able to
You just
pick
go
up on.
assuming that, though. You're looking for it already. Like, you're picking up on it, you know what I mean? You just need to educate people to pick up on that. But, obviously it's definitely a liberal agenda. But let's just
Yeah, sorry, I had to interject that. I
believe in. And if we're going to continue to vote for the lesser of two evils, that's still evil.
I agree with that argument.
Well, as Gary likes to say, we have no problem with people casting a wasted vote. If we get in the debates, we're going to win this whole thing. If you want to waste your vote on Trump or Clinton, be our guest.
But I mean, you both talked about your displeasure with the Trump campaign. If at the end of the day,
seems still smiling,
pull away enough Clinton votes to actually give the presidency to Donald Trump, would that be okay with you, Governor?
At this point,
he's the
pure
showman.
speculation, and,
he's the mouthpiece.
We believe in ourselves and our ticket, and we're voting Libertarian.
I want you to meet Jennifer Pelton. She's a lawyer, registered Republican from Westchester County. She says she leans Libertarian. She likes you. She's still not sure if she's even going to make it to the polls in November. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you for both.
See how we've covered every base so far?
Here. I would like to ask both of you, who has been the biggest inspiration for your views, and how has this person influenced you?
We had to get the one that said their S's to where.
Well, I've got a lot of role models. My role models are those that have been successful.
Perfectly executed business. Question again.
I was really disillusioned when it came to politics, having never been involved in politics before. I found out that my supposed role models weren't necessarily role models. They were
Libertarian
based about getting reelected than not getting reelected. So Thomas Jefferson, though, in the category of role models, here was somebody who was genuinely humble in the office, and that's something that I also pledge to bring an end to the imperial presidency. We'll be great stewards at the office, but we're not getting elected king and dictator here.
Governor Weld?
I was going to say Thomas Jefferson as well, because of the restraint with which he approached government. He said that government is best which governs least, and the sum of good government is to restrain men from injuring one another. And he was not somebody out to stake a big empire for himself, quite the contrary. I wrote a piece for the newspapers not long ago saying that Gary Johnson and Bill Weld are just a pair of classic 19th century Jeffersonian liberals, which is what I think our political pedigree really is.
Our next question is from J.C. Cooper. As far as I know, no relation to me. She's a law office assistant from Monroe, Connecticut, and she says she's currently undecided.
Thank you for having me here tonight. My question is, the next president will most likely need to appoint a few Supreme Court justices. Could you elaborate in the type of judicial philosophy you would like to see in the next justice?
Well, that there wouldn't be a litmus test, and that you would look at a judge, potential judge, as looking at the Constitution from the standpoint of original intent. So really, looking and following through with.
Can I just say, when he says that, it reminds me of last week's episode of Bread and Circuses, and that's what the women's right to vote, when they added that amendment, it was because it wasn't. They were saying because they used the word men, that's why women weren't allowed to vote. So that's where the states were getting off on it. But if you just went on original intent, they would have already had the right to vote.
Right.
But I'm sorry.
Bill's got some.
No, that's good to be explained.
Governor Weld, you're a former prosecutor. Do you have a model? Is there a?
No, I don't have a model. I'd look for the best legal minds I could find and the whole person. Two of my idols on the court were Hugo Black and Bill Douglas, W.O. Douglas, who you wouldn't have thought that they'd be great justices when they got there, but they were broad gauge people who saw the whole picture, and they dissented in an awful lot of cases where 7-2 votes against them, and they said, no, this shall not stand. This is not the right thing to do. And a lot of their dissents have been borne out in history. But there are...
Is there somebody on the current court?
that you admire?
No, I'd almost rather not pick current names out of the hat. I loved Black and Douglas and John Marshall Harlan and Frankfurter for different types of cases.
At least he knows some names to pull out. Johnson had to
from Ellis
defer.
Jeter, who lives in New York City, hasn't decided whether
he's not
for you or
he's not the real candidate.
I don't know very many Supreme Court justices, but I'm not
in my
running for
sophomore
president.
year of college, I was employed at the private religious university that I was attending
Private religious
when an
university?
anonymous person outed me to the school administration and my employer. And on the grounds of religious opposition to homosexuality, I both lost my job and was evicted from my off-campus rental. What do you both believe the role of government is in regulating both religious freedom and civil liberties?
Well, that there be a balance.
Let's
And
get
right
purpose.
now, I fear that under the guise of religious liberty, the LGBT community is being discriminated against. Recently weighed in on Utah's law, which I thought was really a balance between religious freedom and LGBT rights.
Governor, what was it that back in '91 you were speaking out on this issue?
Well, I had worked a lot with the gay and lesbian community during the campaign, and one of my first executive orders, if not the first, was to confer visitation and bereavement rights upon gays and lesbians who are the partners of state workers. I had jurisdiction to do that by executive order. You would have thought that I detonated explosives. It was so far out there. Then I said we had a rash of teenage suicides in Massachusetts from gays and lesbians in high school who had literally committed suicide because they were bullied and harassed so much because of their sexual orientation. I thought that was a problem worthy of systemic examination. So I appointed this commission under the leadership of a very dedicated fellow named David LaFontaine, and they held hearings around the state and really aerated this issue.
So what he's saying is I rallied the state did some state shit, and then everybody thought about it for a minute. They didn't really do anything. And Johnson's saying that he says under religious guise, but what he's essentially saying, because even the student fucking said it, it was a private fucking university, and I'm willing to bet he didn't get another job after he got kicked out of the school that he was also probably working for it, and that's why he got evicted, because he couldn't pay rent, if I had to guess. But what Gary Johnson's saying is that that private university should have had to go against its beliefs. So open borders, we're going to have a bunch of Somalians, people from the Middle East, and they're not going to want to marry a gay couple. And these people, we've already seen what they do when they get pissed enough. We're complacent. These people aren't. And there's enough rednecks in the South that also aren't. You want to see some motherfuckers popping off, tell them they have to do some shit they don't want to do that's not hurting anybody on that scale. And you were saying earlier to me that like all of the conspiracy theory casts you listen to are religious.
No, a lot of them are religious.
You want to see domestic violence start occurring. Start telling people they have to go against their religion, because people hold that shit deeper still in those communities than they do to their belief in like cops being gods amongst men and everything else. Like, no, those motherfuckers, you're going to see domestic terrorism on a whole new scale if you start fucking with those people. And if you pass the legislation, the gays or whoever you're not allowed to discriminate against anymore, they would still have to like go to that business and rile them up enough. But tell me that's not going to happen when everybody's watching Facebook and seeing who to go to hate on so they can feel better about their day.
Yep.
Like they're asking for a police state is what they're asking for. Military rule of law is going to be necessary for them to do this shit.
Appointed a whole bunch of lesbian and gay judges. I think the first one was a woman. And, it's the first time a Massachusetts governor had used the L word. I said, I'm so delighted to appoint so-and-so who's prominently identifies herself as a lesbian, and she's
there you go.
Thank
give
you.
a voice to that segment of the community. It was not very much, but I used to go to national governors meetings, and people would laugh and say, "Don't you realize?" The Democrats were kind of friendly with me, and they would say, "Don't you realize you're supposed to be all one thing or all the other?" And that was a long time ago, but it's getting to the issue
Nobody
we're
said that to
talking
you
about
ever.
today. We don't think you have to be all one thing or all the other, and we think we're right in the middle because
Nobody said that to you ever. You just wanted to say
these views
this.
that we talked about.
On the whole issue of religious freedom, Governor Johnson, you made a comment recently. You said, the full quote, you said, the objective here is to say that discrimination is not allowed by business, I just see religious freedom as a category as just being a black hole. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's just that what is currently taking place with regard to religious freedom is the ability to discriminate against what I believe are the LGBT community. And there can be a balance, I think, between the two.
I thought so. I was afraid I went on a rant
support discrimination in any form whatsoever.
So should somebody in a business who doesn't want to, bake a wedding cake for a gay couple, should they be allowed
giving
not
you a
to
chance to take it back?
I think that currently is the law, that they have to do that. Do they have to decorate the cake? No, they don't have to decorate the cake, but they have to sell the cake if the cake is for sale.
And that to you, that's the correct law?
Well, to me, there should be no discrimination allowed, and I think that is the current law, that discrimination is not allowed. But
we
I
discriminate
don't want
every
to
day.
pass
I picked an Android over
that would
fucking
allow
Apple
for
product.
that kind of discrimination.
I went to one gas station because it looked nicer than another.
One of the words I don't like to hear out of a speech are allowed.
No doubt. Yeah, like who's gonna stop this shit? Like I was saying.
Yeah, it's akin to tolerated. Democracy is non-negotiable.
Presidential nominee and his running mate William Weld. Want to continue the questions from the
what
audience
if
before we do it?
Okay, what if a guy walks into your shop and you think he's going to shoot a bunch of people up and you don't want to sell him a gun?
Nope, not allowed.
What if like if he's black or he's Muslim, he's instantly going to say that. And I guess if he's white and you're black, maybe he'll say you were racist against him. But what are you going to do in that situation? It's happened in the past, though, where gun stores have refused to sell guns to people, and they eventually get them from somewhere else, but they're on video with the gun store owner saying, no, I'm not going to sell you these guns. And then they go off and do some shit when they get the guns.
The part that blows my mind about this is that the people who want the right to force someone to sell them something are just taking away the same freedom that they are asking for. Like, you have the right to choose. Just go somewhere else. It's that simple. I don't know how we as an entire country have gotten so misguided that we feel like we need to have everyone's approval that, oh my God, it should be a law that I don't have to drive 10 miles away to the next fucking baker. Are you kidding me? No, dude, just go somewhere else.
Are you shitting?
You're supposed to be an adult. Bake the fucking cake yourself. Oh my God, be self-reliant and on any level at all in your life. Don't ask your daddy, the government, to do something for you. Is there nothing that you can do for yourself?
Won't bake me this cake. And he's saying, like, well, the cake's already out there for sale to the general public. You have to sell it to them. What if you think that selling it to them is a sin? I'm not religious. I don't think you're religious, really. But like, I understand that mindset. What do you think it's going to do to these people if they have to break? You've seen people talk in tongues. Like, yeah. Okay, tell those motherfuckers that they now have to sell their whatever to some gay people that they don't like.
That there are those radicals
there.
There that
owner to a Muslim that looks like he's going to do some shit.
The fact of the matter is you go into a business, you go to own a business so that way you don't have to be under someone else's thumb the rest of your life. So instead, it's just now the government's going to have you under their thumb. And so you just lose that freedom, the whole thing, everything you worked for, to have the freedom to do what you want for yourself is being taken away from you.
People keep coming. I didn't mean to cut you
off. No, I would.
Yeah,
no, you were
people
good.
Keep coming to this, like, corporations being people is terrifying. What starts a business? What runs a business? It's people. And it's gone from corporations, which is only a fucking legal definition. A business at the end of the day is a person hiring people for a salary and selling a product through one means or another. I'm sorry, but that's all it is. Those are fucking people. Yes, their vote is just as fucking important or matters just as much as yours. I'm sorry. What do you propose we do about that? Do you want to socialize all the businesses so their vote doesn't matter because these people are still going to have that wealth? At what point do they stop being the business? Is it after they pay their salary, or is it pre-paying their salary? Just fucking stop.
I want to ask
get yourself in a hole.
You give an interview to our colleague Ryan Lizza, and you detailed kind of an unorthodox path to victory. Basically hoping to deprive Trump and Clinton of getting to 270 electoral votes to throw the election to the House of Representatives.
No, that our pathway to victory is to actually win it outright, and the idea there is to poll and to get in the presidential debates, which
that's critical for you.
Well, absolutely. There's no chance of winning without being in the presidential debates, and I based that too on last week a projection that the first presidential debate is going to garner more audience than the Super Bowl. Well, you can't win the presidency if you're not in that game. So our strategy is to win this thing outright, and some extraordinary things have to happen.
That's your strategy to win it
There's
outright.
never been a more extraordinary political year in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, you picked a pretty interesting one to enter. Let's go back to the audience. Diane Carlson, she's from Englewood, Colorado. She runs a group that aims to protect kids as marijuana becomes legalized. She's a
We should
Republican,
probably
but she
pause
is still
here and do
undecided
this one
in
tomorrow
this
night
race.
because
Diane,
I
what's
think
your
we're
question?
both going to have a shit
Thank
ton
you,
to say about
Governors.
this.
There's been
Because she asks basically, unless you got time for one more, it's up to you. I know you have other shit on your agenda.
I kind of want to hear what she says on this one.
Okay.
So yeah, I want to. If you don't mind, could you go back a few seconds? I love hearing the introduction. I love getting the full effect of this presentation that's being put on for me. But yeah, after I'd love to break this one down, and then the next time Anderson starts talking, we can break it down, and then we can finish this within 48 hours and get this up here. We'll see what that is, but yeah.
Right on. So we're just going to get started.
Well, you can't win the presidency if you're not in that game. So our strategy is to win this thing outright, and some extraordinary things have to happen. But has there ever been a more extraordinary political year in our lives?
Tell me he's not.
Yeah, you picked a pretty interesting one to enter.
Tell me he's not excited about the political state of the country.
She's from Englewood, Colorado. She runs a group that aims to protect kids as marijuana becomes legalized. She's a Republican, but she is still undecided in this race. Diane, what's your question?
Thank you, Governors. There's been very little understanding of the differences between low to zero THC potency marijuana that's been associated with helping kids with seizures and helping adults with pain, which is completely different from the high THC pot that has become the norm in Colorado. And we know that it's our understanding that you're supporting full-blown nationwide marijuana commercialization. And
legalization.
We'd like to know the specific steps that you'll take to ensure that our nation's youth are educated on the risks of today's high-potency pot, and also wanted to know if you'll be supportive of potency limits.
Here's a fucking idea. Parent your goddamn kids and tell them your goddamn self. And maybe tell them with some common sense that didn't come with your fucking government education telling you how fucking scary it was, so you're asking this stupid-ass question. Maybe you'll try it once and be like, hey, kids, wait till you're old enough and your brain's developed so it doesn't damage it. But yeah, it's a leisurely way to relax, and it's better than this fucking alcohol in the cabinet that I know you're going to try and, like, now. Like, just fucking parent your kids. You don't need the state there. Why do we need fucking the nanny state to nanny our children now?
Because then you can make money off of making sure that the children behave.
Well, I guess so.
I mean, that's how I see it. You make more money, especially now. You get to sell it to them. You know, you can't arrest them for it anymore, so you're damn sure they're going to sell it to you.
Right?
Not losing out on all that money. You kidding me?
I want to make sure we try and get the second part of her question in this clip.
Educated on the risks of today's high-potency pot, and also wanted to know if you'll be supportive of potency limits on all forms of marijuana.
Well, you're talking about kids with seizures, and I was talking...
Do you want to talk about the potency limit?
I just want to talk about, at least, again, I hate to do it, but that was a lot of a question. That was a really hard question to come up with off the top. You know, I mean, like I'm just saying again, I know this stuff is that they get a chance to rehearse these, but that felt like a really loaded up specific question.
It really did. It definitely. You wonder if it's maybe from some lobby from a firm that wants to be testing this shit.
Yeah, it's specific. Like, who stands to make money off the potency limitation? That's what I want to know.
Unless she's really that bought into the propaganda of the anti-marijuana movement. Unless she really believes that higher potency means like somebody's going to stroke out on it or kill their neighbor on it. Like, if she really believes that, I can understand the question, but I don't think that many people buy into that. Those people try weed once in their life.
Or at the very least know somebody. I feel like we all know a pothead, and everybody knows what it looks like and what it sounds like and what it does and does not do. And so she's making it sound like by switching the potency that people, it's going to do something drastic. And I'm like, well,
Gary, if your question is anything but why, you got the answer wrong.
It's like, oh no, this high THC, it might make us more lazy. Like, oh no.
With a researcher in Washington State where a young lady, 12-year-old, was having 300 epileptic seizures a week. She was given 40 milligrams of CBD, and the seizures went from 300 to 30. But then she was given whole plant CBD, whole plant, which contained THC, and the seizures went to 2. So that's something. You know what we need to do is deschedule marijuana as a class 1 narcotic. There needs to be research and development on marijuana.
Who's going to do that, Gary? Is it going to be the government that also told us how terrifying it was, and then they're going to tell us they need to regulate it?
Should there be limits on the potency?
Well, but as I was just pointing out, because CBD doesn't contain any THC, legislatures around the country are embracing it because it's a dramatic improvement, 300 seizures to 30 seizures. But if you go to whole plant CBD, which contains THC, the seizures may be eliminated completely.
If you're going to bring this up, also bring up how the government propaganda that you were forced to pay for kept us from getting to this point, and how the black market rose to conquer it through people trying it in the black market that still existed. It's not like these CBD oils were created in government labs. These are things created in people's garages, and kids fucking got into it or something, and it was tested. I'm not exactly sure how it got to children and seizures, but maybe their kid was just having a seizure and the dude's like, man, just get high. Maybe it'll make it easier. I don't fucking know, but it doesn't matter. The government had nothing to do with it. Why does it need to get its fingers into it now that progress has been made outside of their military arm trying to keep it from happening? Bring that up instead of fucking, we're going to work with the legislator and we're going to make sure that there's strict controls on it and we're going to make sure everything goes just according to plan.
We're going to make sure everybody's safe and there's nothing to be afraid of.
He has stake in a military or in a cannabis company. So control definitely, if he's got a huge money interest behind it and he knows he's going to beat out the other people if he can out-regulate them, maybe he's even in it a little bit there. Who knows?
Oh, of course.
Or they drop out of this election and endorse Hillary.
But Governor, you're talking about CBD oil, which is completely different than THC. And THC, it is what has been associated to be harmful for developing brains. And I personally am very sensitive. My own son had over 80 seizures a day, and I went through that same experience. And I totally understand the desperation of a family to find any cure. But that marijuana that you're talking about that's tied to Charlotte's oil, that's what's been on the national media, is completely different than the majority of the pot being sold in Colorado today. And it's been very difficult and very confusing to educate on the harms of marijuana in our state because there's a perception that it's completely harmful when we've got marijuana that's up to 95% THC concentration levels, which is unprecedented.
You know, in Colorado, there were increases in
so you want to fearmonger behind the higher potency marijuana now that your lower potency treatment has broken through this. So you're saying, oh, the progress can stop now. We need to stop this now, even though that shit's existence is what brought things like CBD oil and waxes and THC concentrates. And then when you get into removing that shit, all happening in the black market, separating your non-THC containing butter with your THC. Jesus fuck, lady, leave it alone and fucking, you're with your kid. He's having 80 seizures a day. When's he going to go out and fucking hit up the weed man for this high potency weed that's going to make him sit on the couch and not have seizures and be a little happier about his day? Yeah. Are you afraid he's going to be like seizing out and be lazy? Is that what you're worrying about now?
And it's just, isn't it so fitting that they got someone up there who has a son that has 80 seizures a day?
How would you deal with other sort of follow-on effects?
Is that how many she said he had a day?
Yeah.
And I thought that was the study program. That's yeah. So, like, did you wait to get your son's treatment until it was okay by the government? So, are you going to push these people into a black market again?
Yeah.
Like, just point that out.
What happens if your son's seizures come back and he needs a stronger potency? What are you going to do then? Now that you've fearmongered us into making this regulation where you thought it was where it previously fit your agenda. It's just
That's somebody wanting their agenda to stick with their principles that they don't want to let off of.
Yeah,
Well, in my specific situation, this stuff's helpful, but nobody else needs it, especially if it's just making them happy.
Again, and if you would go back and break down her interaction with them, which maybe we should start the next episode with her again, so we can go back and look at it. You can see some things I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure she messes up the second half of her question.
I was wondering.
She got her words mixed around, which is okay. That happens to all of us, but it did just really seem. This one was weird to me because she seemed like she didn't actually have any knowledge on the topic, that she just kept talking about like THC potency, just saying really, really bland, talking points that she didn't actually have the understanding to be behind.
Exactly.
And it's again, like, why are you having someone like that talk about that? All they're going to do is make a fearful statement, because we are all wary and fearful of the things we don't understand. That's kind of natural.
Yeah.
But
let's see what he says, and then we definitely should let you go.
Actually, overall, Anderson, all the statistics were pointing north. Not significantly, but all the statistics were actually north. You may be pointing at some aberrations within that.
Yeah, there was a Northwestern University and University of Colorado study about ER visits rising by 44% after marijuana was legalized in 2012 to 2014.
I just think that so much research and development needs to take place that hasn't taken place, and that marijuana products deal or compete directly with legal prescription drugs that statistically kill 100,000 people a year, and there are no documented deaths due to marijuana. And that concern that you're expressing needs to be taken into account.
There have been some deaths in Colorado, and there is some really concerning data coming out.
But essentially, you're saying more studies should be done.
Absolutely, yes. Something that by descheduling marijuana as a class 1 narcotic can take place.
Matthew Larson is here. He's a teacher in New York City. Says he hasn't made up his mind who he's going to vote for.
All right, so we should probably
take
our break here.
Definitely. That's not the same. Oh, no herpes on this one. Okay. Yeah. So we'll just have to get back into this, but that was a lot of fun. Hopefully we don't get pulled off YouTube immediately.
I don't think he's drawing that big of a following yet.
No, we'll just put up on the Facebook page, 6 Secret Radio, and or you can just follow the entire Bad Dinner Guest Network at is it just Bad Dinner Guests on
Yep, Twitter, Facebook.
Okay, we're on all the social medias.
All that good stuff.
Right on. So we'll put up a link when we're coming out with that one, but do you have anything else you wanted to? No,
we'll be doing a extended episode of our sports show tomorrow night, so tune back into the Bad Dinner Guest. We got a night episode every night this week.
Wow, busy. That's a fucking step up and a half. That's fucking awesome. This is 60 Grit Radio. We'll see you soon.